What is up? Back again with another 1973 Garo issue flip through. Still slowly getting through the 1973 run for Garo, and it is becoming one of my favorite years in Garo, not only the stories itself, but just aesthetically from the covers too. So today we've got the third issue of that year, which is for the month of March, and the cover is done by Shinji Nagashima. This little boy is a part of his series that is called Traveler, the Traveler Boy or Traveler-kun. And so let's just get into it. I will be flipping through the entire issue as usual and explaining some of the stories as I go. And just from the starts, we've got firstly an illustration by Masuzou Furukawa, I believe. And then we've got like another illustration here by Akasegawa Genpei. So the first story is definitely my favorite story out of the issue, and one of my favorite stories that I've read from Garo in general. This is a story that translates to something like Dancing to Ayuki by Kusunoki Shouhei. And just to give some information about Shouhei, he joined Garo, or like learned of Garo in its early stages. He was actually an assistant to Shirato Sanpei, but unfortunately he died quite young. So he was born in 1944 and he passed away in 1974 because of a heart valve disease. And unfortunately that made some of his works quite hard to find. But I think in the early 2000s, Seiindo and another publisher compiled his works again into like a limited run. So finding and reading Kusunoki Shouhei one-shots in Garo is amazing. It's so sad that, you know, a talented artist like him had passed away so young, you know, only at the age of 30, and it was quite lamented. There's also a memorial issue as well, which I think I do have. I might pull out later, but yeah, there was a memorial issue which has like the cover art being his portrait. But getting into this story, this is one of my favorite one-shots that I've read from all of the Garo issues so far. So we start off with a little boy here who you can see pictured quite sick. So he is living with his grandma, but he's going through a very hard time because what it's actually revealed to be is like a tumor, so like a cancerous, like cancer, right? And he is slowly dying, and it's quite sad to see that he's just, you know, bedridden the entire time. And while he is sick in bed, he notices a bird, and the bird starts talking. So you can see the speech, the dialogue bubbles popping up from it. And so you can sort of interpret this as in his sickness or his fever dream, he starts talking to and seeing these birds. And, you know, it's not, we don't know whether it's an actual real thing that had happened or because he was sick. And more birds come. They start to also talk to him as well. And I believe at this point, they sort of tell him or show him how to fly. So here he is getting out of bed, notices the birds again, and sort of on his deathbed, which is quite a sad scene, the final time he sees the bird again, and this is where the bird sort of instructs him or tells him how to fly or that he can fly. And so he musters his last bouts of strength, and in a beautiful last couple of pages, it's a snowy night, and we have this sequence of panels that showcase how the sort of grief leaves him. So this is just my interpretation, but how, you know, in this snowy night, nothing else matters except him flying or floating off, and the last thing he says is Ba-chan, which is grandma. So I interpret it as it being his death. So, but his death shown in a more with a sort of more beautiful and subtle tone or portrayal. And I think that these last three pages with the snow is just so it is gut wrenching, and it is quite emotional. Just seeing how he is so happy at the end. He's just, free finally of the suffering. But yeah, opening this issue off with this first story, it was wow. It was a lot to take in, definitely, but 100% one of my favorite one shots. Out of all, I think I've read maybe 20 Garo issues now to this point. So having this being one of my favorites is a big thing. So I do know that this this is 1973. So Shouhei only passed away a year after this. So I believe there are more of his one-shots in the rest of the 1973 run. So I'm really excited to see what other stories he has. But I'm still constantly looking for the tankobon that they release with all his stories, and it is hard to find. Like, it can be like more than $100. But yeah, we'll see whether once I do find that. If I do find that, I definitely will show that off on the channel, because Kusunoki Shouhei is definitely a mangaka that I am looking out for in my Garo reading journey. But yeah, so the next story that we have is by Nagashima Shinji. So this is the Traveler-kun series, or the Traveler Boy, and it's the first chapter in this one. And there you go, that is the cover. The cover art's in that panel there, and it's kind of like just a boy who's traveling, who encounters weird things like a giant egg and birds, and it's just weird worms come out. So it's kind of like it feels like a children's story, picture book type of thing, but it was quite hard to read, as in like it's the dialogues in handwriting, not printed, so it's kind of hard to translate. So I kind of just only understood the gist of it, but very cute, very cute drawings by Nagashima. This series continues on in the rest of the issue, the rest of the 1973 issues. So let's move on to another manga that we are seeing a lot of in the 70s, Masuzou Furukawa. This is again the Purple Legend series by him, and this one is quite like, I'm not going to show the content too much, but it is there is a trigger warning of sexual assault, but essentially, and it's also it's a very serious and emotional one as well, but it does follow a couple of hooligans, delinquents, but mainly one of the girls pictured here, right? And also really it reminds me a lot of Oji Suzuki in the way that you have these really strange panels of like big hands reaching into the page, that sort of thing. But one thing I really love about Furukawa and his stories is that the backgrounds are very strong. Really like the textures of them. But it seems like this guy knows the girl and they're talking about some things, but I'm going to skip the next section because it is where the quite triggering scenes happen. It's very serious, and it does get you quite if you're not in the mood for something like this, you can sort of skip over. But so I'm just saying this now before I talk about what happens in the rest of the story. But essentially, after the incident, it results in the girl drowning in the river. So they had committed suicide and took their life, and it's just an extremely sad scene where the friend, the guy that she was talking with before, is trying to wrestle the police officers away. And even worse, this very big panel of just him crying and the police officer, and like the way that his face is shadowed makes it even more somber and more malicious, actually. And then this last little sound effect, ga, with an exclamation mark, ends that story. So a very sad one. It was tough reading that. Furukawa does do a lot of those types of stories. Not all of them are in that sort of vein of very triggering topics. Some of them are, but a lot of his works are dramatic, serious, somber, that sort of thing. And then we sort of move on to like a completely opposite. This is the Giliac Funguridan series by Fujisawa Mitsuo, an artist who does a lot of how I described it previously as very psychedelic and nonsense works. And this is a series, I guess, following these cavemen type people. And I was reading one of Ryan Holmberg's essays on, it was, I think, Sasaki Maki and Hayashi Seiichi. I'll link it in the description below. And in the intro of that essay, it was talking about how there were they introduced three artists. Fujisawa Mitsuo was one of them, but Holmberg stated that not much is known about Mitsuo, and a lot is forgotten now. Like out of Sasaki Maki and Hayashi Seiichi, Mitsuo wasn't as popular, and now in English we do have Hayashi books translated. We do have Sasaki Maki book translated, but nothing from Mitsuo, which is quite kind of sad to think about. When I was reading that essay, that even though I don't prefer his stories too much, I still very much respect his art and the way that he creates his stories. But yeah, that was just something that I remembered while reading through this. But if you are a fan of Fujisawa Mitsuo, then don't worry. With all of these 70s issues that I'm doing and showcasing, he does appear quite a bit. So if you are a fan of that, then check out some of the previous Garo flip through videos, and of course any future Garo issues in the 70s. They will probably and most likely have some more Mitsuo works. But yeah, let's continue on. We've got another story that's titled Local University by Akiyama Shigenobu, who I couldn't really find too much info on them. They had only contributed works in, I think, the 70s. I think specifically only 73. No other year did they contribute any one-shots like this, which I'm not sure exactly why. I couldn't really find any other info. They don't have any tankobon released, unfortunately, but I really do like the art, and I think that's a very common thing for me reading Garo. Even if I don't like the stories like this, for example, I'm not really interested in the stories of Shigenobu, but I always love the art. Like a lot of the Garo artists always appreciate the art style, even if I don't prefer the stories themselves. And I think the variety that it gives is just amazing. And I think the way that, like, I would say Shigenobu has a lot of like very thin lines, and he does have like a sort of messier way of creating his backgrounds and stuff. But again, I still appreciate how good it looks visually. So now we move on to one of another Gekiga artist who was quite revered during the time of Garo. This is a story titled Otobai Shoujo, or Motorbike Girl, by Oji Suzuki. And showcasing this off, this one shot here was collected in this tankobon, which I'll just slowly or quickly flip through. So this is just a later compilation of his one-shots released in 2000, fourth reprinting in 2005. But yeah, here you go. Otobai Shoujo, that's the first story, and it is the title of the tankobon as well. So I'll just flip through what it looks like in here. And then we'll go back to the Garo issue over here of what it looks like in its original format and the first time it appeared. And this, with much like, sorry, my words just came out muddled there. With a lot of Suzuki's stories, I do find them very confusing, but that doesn't compromise the enjoyment and the experience of reading. So what I can figure out from this is that this girl it's something to do with freedom, I guess, the feeling of just riding on a bike. But a lot of weird things happen. As you can see here, she's riding, and then does her bike turn into this guy with wings? And he's like saying some things. I'm not sure, but I always appreciate the atmosphere of these stories that he creates. He's like, to me, he's very iconic in representing the type of gekiga that appeared in Garo. You know, like in my mind, it's like, I guess, avant-garde gekiga, or I don't know how to describe it. Think of Shinichi Abe, think of Furukawa, Suzuki, of course, Hayashi, those gekiga artists, mangaka, that sort of era. So Suzuki, I think, is very iconic in that sense. So let's move on to some other works. This is just an advert for Roichi Ikegami's Oen no Koi. Next, we've got again some more Susumu Katsumata Works, 4-koма or 4-panel works. Some of them were political, some of them weren't. But it's very thin lines from Susumu in this specific format that he does. He doesn't only do 4-panel works, he does actual one-shots as well. Previously collected in, what's the name of it? Fukushima Devilfish and Red Snow, which I still need to find Red Snow. Red Snow is in English, I just need to find it. Now we move on to the Ryuzan Aki Canned Nonsense collection. So Ryuzan Aki does nonsense works, and you can understand them without knowing Japanese, because most of the time it's just, you know, reading 1, 2, 3, 4 in that sequence, wordless manga. And yeah, it is nonsense, it is wacky and all that stuff. He did appear in the Gendai Comics Avant-Garde Masterpiece collection that I showed off on the channel a couple of months ago. So if you want more, you can find that there. I'm not entirely sure if he had any tankobon released. Maybe he did, but I don't have any right now. My exposure has only just been through these Garo issues. So we move on now to another regular contributor to Garo. This is Kawasaki Yukio, a story that translates to Wriggle in the Dark. And again, if you have watched my other Garo issue flip-throughs, I don't really read these ones too much because it's not my thing, but of course, just always good to just flip through. But we are nearing the end of this issue. I believe this chapter by Yukio was quite a long one as well. But again, always got to appreciate the art and the effort put into making all of these. Now, I think this is the second last chapter. This is Month by Shinichi Abe, another gekiga artist. And this one I don't feel like was in the Miyoko Asagaya book. I think this is a separate story, but from what I could understand, it's set in a mining town, and I guess it just follows the lives of a couple of different characters, like the men working in the town, one of their daughters, some kendo club as well. So we've got some bathhouse stuff. So it seems to be just moving between these characters and their experiences in this town, their struggles, that sort of thing. But again, love Shinichi Abe and his art. It does go back and forth between very simple designs and also it gets a bit bolder, and he does do quite detailed background sometimes as well. But yeah, and now we move to the last chapter, I believe. This is Madame D by Hayashi Seiichi. And this one, which is a couple of interesting things about it, is that it's not the blue color print, it's completely black. And I have shown this out in a previous video before, but my specific issue has been drawn on. So they are not supposed to have a nose or a mouth, but whoever had this issue had drawn them in, which I think is funny. Like I do prefer the original, but it is funny just having that, because yeah, this is what they're supposed to look like. No nose, no mouth, nothing like that. But this was another confusing story. I don't know what happened. Something about finding the Adam and Eve company. That's all I got from it. Very confusing, as Hayashi is a lot of the times, but again, the art is just amazing. And I am recording this video on the 29th of June. This is my second video I'm recording today. A while back, I recorded a Seiichi Hayashi collection video. No idea when that will come out, but I have recorded that. So I will showcase in that video I showcase what Hayashi books I have, which aren't too many, to be honest, but you know, it is what I have, and what I have is of him. All of them are very treasured. So that was the end of this issue here. This is the a back cover advertising the Hayashi Seiichi collection of his works. But yeah, that was the March issue of the 1973 of 1973 in Garo. So I hope you enjoyed that one. We'll of course be back with more Garo down along the line. So we'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.